भारत का कोहिनूर रहा नहीं, हमसे बिछड़ गया है।
Mr. Tata was really somebody who was very, very humble, very graceful.
Ratan Tata was a great man, a great mind, and a great son of India.
India will miss him greatly.
He was a perfect gentleman and perfect Indian.
Son of the soil who believed in the Bharat story. Passionate about his work, simple in his lifestyle, rich in his values, and yet so humble.
आज पूरे देश के लिए एक बहुत दुखद दिन है। भारत माता के सच्चे सपूत रतन टाटा जी आज हमारे समक्ष नहीं रहे।
हमारी इकोनॉमी का कोई भी क्षेत्र देख लें तो उनका योगदान मैं समझता हूं एक किस्म से एक नया टेम्पलेट है।
Whenever the economic history of modern India is written, I would feel that a full volume will not be enough to describe his achievements.
I'd like to be remembered as a person who made a difference. Not anything more, not anything less.
Ratan Tata, the man who took India Inc. to the world, has passed. We recount the lifetimes and legacy of Ratan Tata on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. Legendary industrialist Ratan Tata, who transformed the Tata Group into a global behemoth during his over two-decade tenure as chairman, was accorded a state funeral today. A philanthropist who led a modest lifestyle, an animal lover and a startup enthusiast who personally invested in over 40 companies, Ratan Tata died at the age of 86. Tributes have been pouring in from across the country and the world. Top industrialists, including Reliance Chairman Mukesh Ambani, Tata Sons Chairman N. Chandrasekaran, Aditya Birla Group Chairman Kumaramangalam Birla, and many others paid their respects at Mumbai's NCPA, where Tata's mortal remains were kept. And joining us now is Kumaramangalam Birla, chairperson of the Aditya Birla Group. Mr. Birla, many thanks for joining us today. It is in many ways a day that leaves a big void, not just for the House of Tatas, but for India. And I want to start by talking to you about that. In Mr. Tata's own words, he said he would like to be remembered as someone who made a difference. Nothing more, nothing less. What do you believe has been the impact that Ratan Tata has had on India and on the House of Tatas?
Well, I think, Shirin, to start with, it is a sad moment to lose someone like him. But I think it's also a life to be celebrated. I think that very few people can make the kind of impact that he has made in one lifetime. You know, his footprint, as you know, goes far beyond just industry. I think his legacy as a humanist, as a philanthropist, will probably be remembered even more than his legacy as just being an industrialist. I think that his ambition or his dream of making a difference, he's done more than, more than one can imagine to do that, to make a difference. He's made a difference to Indian, industry, to society, through all the charitable and philanthropic work that the Tatas do, some of which I know he was very involved with himself. All very quiet, didn't speak about it. You know that he was extremely low profile, shunned any kind of attention. And he was a true son of India.
Well, that is right. That's, an introvert, as he's been described by many, a man who led a life mostly in private. And over the course of his two-decade-long career as the chairman of Tata Sons, did evolve, as Mr. Gopalakrishnan told us. He became much more of a communicator as he grew into his shoes as a leader. But Mr. Birla, let's talk about the impact that he had as far as the House of Tatas were concerned. And, just to draw a parallel, for instance, between what the Birla Group has done and what the House of Tatas have done. The global ambition and the global aspiration, Mr. Tata was very clear. He wanted to take India to the world, but at the same time, he also wanted to bring the world to India. And we saw a whole host of joint ventures being inked across a diverse set of sectors, from consumer to technology, now semiconductors and defense, and the global aspiration of taking India to the world. How do you read the change that he brought in, both with the Make in India for the world as well as taking India to the world?
So, Shirin, if you remember, before he came in, the Tata Group was more a constellation of companies. I think he, after coming in, actually pulled them together. They became a true conglomerate in the true spirit after his coming in. So that was, I think, his first real impact in terms of the change he brought about in the Tata Group. He clearly had global ambitions. We know that. We know about some of the large acquisitions that he made abroad. I think that he was someone who was very exposed globally. He sat on many global boards. He sat on the board of the Ford Foundation. So I think that just gave him a broader vision. He didn't want to be constrained by restricting business only to India. And I think that his joint ventures reflect the same spirit of being global, even though you might be a business or one of his businesses or some of them may be based out of India. I believe he thought that they should have a more global flavor to them.
You talked about how he had to bring together these disparate companies into the House of Tatas and unite them, so to speak. But one of the other things that he did try to do, and was in fact forced to do, was also to ensure that the Tata Group, while maintaining its legacy and its values, also kept pace with the times. And I know that that is a challenge that you've also had to face, going from the womb to tomb days to a much more merit-based approach and attitude. How would you read the changes that Mr. Tata brought on in light of your own experience of what it takes to do that?
A little difficult to compare, Shirin. But I would say that I was on the board of Tata Steel, in the early 90s when he was going through this transition. And I remember very clearly that Tata veterans who were on the board were wheeled in wheelchairs. At least 2 or 3 in the board were people who were really old, but still on the board, not really able to even walk themselves. And I could see that was a very painful, disturbing thing for him. I mean, I don't think he liked the feeling of that at all, but he was extremely polite, his gracious self always. And I could connect with the things he did post that, in terms of bringing in a retirement age or bringing in fresh blood. I think that he probably had far more constraints to be able to do that. He had an old guard, which was fiercely independent, if I can call it that. But I think he did all of that. He took his own time, but he did that rather well. And I think these are processes and institutions that are alive and kicking even today. So obviously he's created a sustainable global giant.
Yes, speaking of creating that sustainable global giant, and again, I want to draw parallels in, what it takes to be able to manage a conglomerate at that scale and that size. I mean, diverse businesses from defense to hospitality to technology. An architect by training, the ability to traverse and navigate a plethora of different businesses, Mr. Birla. I mean, that does take the ability to be a lifelong learner, doesn't it?
So I came in around the same time after my father passed away, Shirin, and I could see that he was learning very fast. We'd speak sometimes. I think he had a very clear view. Um, he had his own way of running business. Tata Motors, as we know, was clearly his favorite. His eyes lit up every time Tata Motors was talked about. He said he didn't spend too much time on TCS because it was, a finely tuned machine where he didn't need to spend much time. So I think it was horses for the courses for him. He kind of chose where he wanted to spend time. Many of us spend time, say, for example, reviewing our businesses. He didn't do that. He was the big picture man. He set policy. He set the overall direction. Like I said, he brought together the whole group by creating a corporate center. And I think that all of that has stead the group in very good stead even today.
You said that you took over at the same time or around the same time that Mr. Tata took charge of Tata Sons. You've obviously, through the course of the past 2 decades, have had several conversations with him. Is there an enduring memory? Is there something specific that you have taken from his leadership style, from him as an individual that you've tried to incorporate in yours?
So, he was quite a giant, so I can't say I've taken anything from his leadership style, but I would say that he ran his group of companies like a true trustee, in the true spirit of trusteeship. He was himself very frugal. He had a very simple house. He had barely 2 or 3 staff at home, 2.5, I think, because one of them was, I think, part-time. Didn't allow himself any luxuries. He was fond of, I know he used to buy suits and shirts in excess of what maybe he should have, but that's about it. Very frugal, very simple. Didn't have too many needs at all. His whole life was about the Tata Group. And of course, giving back to India. I think that was a big theme in his life. He wanted to connect with the common person and he wanted to, give back to India, which I think is really a remarkable legacy that he's left behind.
Yes, a philanthropist as well as an entrepreneur with the mindset of creating businesses that would serve India and India's interests. But, Mr. Birla, it's also been a unique structure that's operated for more than a century now, and it continues to work despite the challenges and despite the hurdles along the way. What do you believe makes the way that the Tata Group is structured, and it's as Mr. Gopalakrishnan says, it's hard to demystify the magic, but it still seems to work. What, to your mind, has ensured that it lasts and through the test of time and continues to create the value and the wealth that it does?
I think the very strong base of values that he reinforced, that's something that he inherited from, I know, JRD and perhaps the generation before that as well, that we know that he was uncompromising about his integrity, also his compassion for, the marginalized people of society, for the downtrodden, the legacy of trust that he leaves behind. So I think this whole platform or foundation of very firmly held values by his family, and he kind of reinforced it in a very strong way. I think that is the biggest glue that will keep a group which is that large together. And of course, I think he also focused on bringing in the right talent, empowering people, taking the group global, like we spoke about. I think that all of these, that's all that one can do really to keep an organization fit and competing, able to compete for the future. So I think in my eyes, he did all the right things. He had a fairly kind of a scattered set of companies when he inherited them. And I think that he leaves the group a much more cohesive united conglomerate than when he inherited it.
Well, an empowerer, an enabler and a uniter that in many ways sums up the legacy of Ratan Tata. Mr. Birla, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for speaking with us this evening on a day when India has lost one of her most loved business stalwarts. Appreciate your time here on CNBC-TV18. Well, the tributes are pouring in. Leaders like Deepak Parekh calling him a giant of a human being. Rajiv Bajaj recalled how Tata Motors and his company Bajaj Auto almost decided to collaborate on the nano car project. Take a look.
He never missed an opportunity. They have had many consultants of all types. But his mind was very clear which businesses we should stay. We should not be on the periphery of any business. Unless we are number 1, 2 or 3, we should not remain in the business. And he endured this thought of his, and he pursued this vision amongst his senior colleagues also. And that was one of the reasons why the smaller businesses were sold or they were amalgamated into larger units.
I've met Mr. Tata obviously fleetingly many a times, but in depth once, I think about 15 years back, sometime in 2008, 2009. This is the time when Tatas were contemplating making the Nano, and I was thinking about our quadricycle, the Qt. And something just inspired me to go across and meet a potential competitor who was my father's age. I sought a meeting. I was granted one. I went to Tata House one evening at about 4 o'clock. And I must share with you what happened there. I waited for him in his office, and when he came to me, for the first 10 minutes, all he did was vent actually. He told me one by one about 15 instances all through school when my father had bullied him on different occasions. You know, and in the classroom, even in the bathroom, you know, and I was just speechless. I didn't know what to do, and I have to this date carried a diary to schedule my day for every year. So, you know, I made a careful note of all that in my diary, and all my 35 diaries are with me in my office, so I'm sure I can still find my notings in this regard. So I wrote all this down. And when I came back, I sat in front of my father and I said to him, you know, this is what Mr. Tata says about you. And my father said, oh, you know how my father was. He just waved his hand and he said, you know, this is all rubbish or something to that effect. But I told him word for word, and the actual words Mr. Tata had used were the exact words that my father, that typical of my father. So I knew that Mr. Tata was 100% correct.
Well, business leaders there with their anecdotes. Now, politicians across spectrum hailing Ratan Tata's contribution to India. Prime Minister Modi tweeted calling him a visionary business leader, a compassionate soul and an extraordinary human being. Home Minister Amit Shah, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, Maharashtra Chief Minister Shinde and top state leaders paid their last respects at Mumbai's NCPA, where Ratan Tata's mortal remains were kept.
टाटा समूह का नेतृत्व करना ही अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ी बात होती है, परंतु उन्होंने टाटा समूह का नेतृत्व ऐसे समय में संभाला जब टाटा समूह को अनेक प्रकार के परिवर्तन करना जरूरी था, और धैर्यपूर्वक बारीकी से अध्ययन करके टाटा समूह के सारे उद्योगों को और काम करने की पद्धति को दोनों को उन्होंने परिवर्तित किया, और पहले की तरह आज भी टाटा समूह भारत के उद्योग जगत में एक ध्रुव तारा बनकर है.
Only last week, when I was in New York at a Taj hotel, the lady who was running the lifts, the lift woman, was very proudly telling me that I am a friend of Mr. Ratan Tata, and he had invited me to visit India. I have visited India for 1 week as a guest of Ratan Tata. The lift woman at one of their hotels. That was the character of the person.
सिर्फ उन्होंने एक बिजनेस एम्पायर को ग्रो नहीं किया, उनका जो योगदान है आप देश की विकास के लिए 1991 जब उन्होंने दायित्व संभाला टाटा सन्स का, दैट वाज आल्सो द ईयर जब हमने लिबरलाइजेशन की इकोनॉमी की, और ही इज वेरी मच पार्ट ऑफ दैट स्टोरी. सो ही इज अ लेजेंड बाय एनी स्टैंडर्ड्स एंड दिस लेजेंड विल नॉट फेड अवे.
आज पूरे देश के लिए एक बहुत दुखद दिन है. भारत माता के सच्चे सपूत रतन टाटा जी आज हमारे समक्ष नहीं रहे. उनकी जिंदगी एक प्रेरणा है हर नौजवान के लिए, हर भारतीय के लिए. उनकी दृढ़ इच्छा शक्ति, उनकी रिस्क लेने की क्षमता, उनका एक अटल संकल्प, और जहां लोग डरते थे निवेश करने के लिए, वहीं रतन टाटा जी आगे बढ़ के निवेश करते थे.
Ratan Tata's demise, what does it mean for Tata Trust and the plan forward? Vivek joins us now with more. Vivek.
Well, that's right. Well, the unfortunate demise actually has left quite a big void, and this particular void will be felt especially in two important entities as far as the Tata Group is concerned. The first one, of course, will be the Tata Sons, which owns majority shareholding in the listed companies, and number two of the important Tata Trust that actually holds significant stake. We've done a deep dive into how exactly does the shareholding pattern across, the unlisted or the private entities of the Tata Group pan out, and what is the kind of impact that you could see as far as the listed universe of the Tata Group stocks is concerned. First up, let's understand what is Tata Sons. Tata Sons is the principal investment holding company and promoter of the Tata companies. And in Tata Sons, 66% of the equity capital of Tata Sons is actually being held by philanthropic trusts. Now, Ratan Tata was the chairman of the Tata Trust, two important Tata Trusts, that is Sir Ratan Tata Trust as well as Sir Dorabji Tata Trust. The chairperson here was Sir Ratan Tata. Now, these two trusts together own a little over 51.5% stake in Tata Sons. Now, going forward, what is going to be important, given the fact that there is a void as far as the chairperson is concerned, there will now need to be a voting to decide who exactly becomes the next chairperson. 13 trustees in total exist across these two trusts, where 5 individuals are actually common trustees. Who are the 5 individuals? Former Defence Secretary Vijay Singh, automobile industrialist Venu Srinivasan, Ratan Tata's half-brother and Trent chairman Noel Tata. Remember, Noel Tata is married to Alu Mistry, the daughter of Palanji Mistry, as well as she is the sister of Cyrus Mistry. Apart from that, businessman Maili Mistry as well as lawyer Darius Kambata are the 5 members in common across both of the trusts. Now, the way forward, like we mentioned, clarity needs to emerge on the next chairperson of the Tata Trust. Chairperson elected generally is through the majority consent amongst the trustees. Now, looking at the list of companies where Tata Sons holds stake, remember these stakes are quite significant. Amongst the top 4-5 key names, almost 71.5% stake in TCS, over 40% stake in Tata Motors, Trent, they have over 32% stake, Tata Power, over 45% stake. In total, in the listed universe, Tata Sons actually controls a little over 16 lakh crore in listed group Tata companies. So that's the kind of impact, and that's why this particular development will be very key to track as to who exactly will be the next chairperson of the Tata Trust.
Vivek, many thanks for joining us. We will head into a break, but up next, TCS misses estimates in Q2, even as revenues rise over 2%. Margins miss the mark, profits contract by over 1%. That and more when we return. Well, more on India Business Hour. The Bulls maintained their winning momentum on the Lal Street. Despite a range-bound trading session, the sensex and the nifty closed with marginal gains. The Nifty Bank Index ended with gains of over 1%. Mid-caps continue to underperform, with the index ending marginally in the red. Earnings season has kicked off, and it's kicked off with TCS, which has missed estimates in Q2. Now, even as revenues have risen, margins have missed the mark and profits have contracted by over 1%. Rima is standing by to take us through the highlights of TCS, which has kick-started earnings season. Rima.
TCS reports a margin miss in the current quarter. EBIT margins at 24.1% fall short of street expectations of 24.9%, and it also marks the second consecutive quarter where margins have come down. In Q4 of FY24, margins were at 26%. They came down to 24.7% in Q1 due to wage hike, and this quarter there is a further decline to 24.1%. This miss in margins is driving a drop in the company's profitability, so net profits are down 1.1% quarter on quarter, again lower than the CNBC-TV18 poll. But that's on margins. On the top line, on growth per se, growth is very much intact. So the company's dollar revenue has gone up by 2.2% sequentially, largely in line, in fact slightly better than the CNBC-TV18 poll of 2%. But here the growth is driven by largely India. Now India is just 9% of the company's top line, but it's seen a 21% quarter-on-quarter increase in revenues, and it's doubled practically on a year-on-year basis. So nearly 70% of the incremental revenue is driven by India, and here we know the company is executing the large BSNL deal. In fact, it appears that this BSNL deal, which has contributed to the company's top line, could have also hurt the company's margins. North America has been under pressure, so that's down 3.5%, so that's disappointing. Though Europe and UK, have showcased growth. The good thing in the numbers is that BFSI continues to show recovery. Remember, last quarter we saw the early signs of a BFSI recovery. It's further strengthened. So quarter on quarter, the financial sector growth has come in at 1.9%. So that is a positive. Deal wins largely steady sequentially. Hiring has continued for the second consecutive quarter, and attrition has been stable at 12.3%. So all in all, good top-line growth driven by the India business, but margins are a bit disappointing and they have missed street expectations.
Rima, many thanks. That's TCS for you. Now, the Telecom Department has sought a revival plan from Vodafone Idea before approving its bank guarantee waiver. Sources say that the Telecom Department has sought a 4 to 5 year roadmap from the cash-strapped telecom company. The telco was scheduled to submit bank guarantees in tranches starting September this year. The big international story is Israeli forces continue to pound Beirut and northern Gaza. The UN has said that 2 peacekeepers were injured after Israeli forces shot at them in Lebanon and has called it a grave violation of international law. At least 4 people have died after Hurricane Milton slammed the coast of Florida. In the U.S., more than 3 million people have been left without power after the storm left a trail of destruction. Tennis legend Rafael Nadal has announced his retirement. He will play his last match in the Davis Cup this November. Nadal has won 22 Grand Slams in a career that began in 2002. He's only second to Novak Djokovic, who's won 24 Grand Slams. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18 on a day that the nation says goodbye to Ratan Tata.